Normally, an endorsement from another world leader is welcome news for politicians with an election looming. But Prime Minister Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre are fighting to show that U.S. President Donald Trump does not want them to win our next election. This comes after Trump said the following about Poilievre.
The Conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal, actually, with a liberal. And maybe they're going to win, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me at all.
The Conservative leader then took to social media to say Trump is endorsing Carney because he believes the newly minted Liberal leader will go easy on him during this trade war. How much will Donald Trump's remarks factor into the upcoming federal election campaign? That is the big question right across the country. Our guest this morning is Lori Turnbull. She is a politics professor at Dalhousie University. Thank you so much for being with us, Professor Turnbull.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
What are your thoughts about the latest comments and the infighting that Canadians are having amongst each other about what it means?
I know. I mean, you never know when Trump says something, how much he means it, how long he's going to mean it for, who knows, right? I think he's responding actually to the fact that Poilievre has said some negative things about him. And so you can hear Trump saying, well, you know, he said negative things, he's no friend of mine, he stupidly, as if he should be his friend, but he's not. And so we can see that Trump's got no love for Poilievre. He doesn't talk about Carney. That's the interesting thing to me, is he hasn't said anything about, as far as I know, about Carney winning the leadership, what it would be like to work with Carney. So it's very interesting to me that Trump hasn't lashed out at him, even after he won the leadership, even after he was sworn in.
Right. Well, you know, Trump, in my opinion, and this is opinion, taking on my journalistic hat, is staying true to his colors because people have suggested that what we know for sure is that he takes things personally. And so if you've said something bad about him, the political stripes don't necessarily matter. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, I think you're bang on. That's exactly it. Trump hears people talk about him. And then he absolutely, like he has a thin skin. That affects him. I didn't even know whether he was even listening to Poilievre. But once Poilievre, I think, started to want to push back on Trump to show Canadians he wasn't interested in being cozy with Trump. He was going to stand up to Trump. I think that Trump heard that, and that created a reaction in him. But we see Carney taking things a little bit differently, even since he's become prime minister, as opposed to the way he went about it when he was running for the Liberal leadership. Now he's kind of, it seems to me Carney's being very careful not to poke Trump, but also to say, you know, we're not going to do business, we're not going to talk until there's a recognition that Canada's a sovereign country and we get the respect we deserve on that. But he's not, Carney's not using Trump's name a whole lot, right? And when he does, it's sort of, I understand he wants the economy of the Americans to be better. I understand he's got concerns about the fentanyl crisis. Okay, fine, but we're not going to talk until it's all respectful. So it looks like Trump is really reacting to what Poilievre has said about him.
Right, and I think we all took note of how cautious Prime Minister Carney was with his words when he suggested, you know what, I respect that he is doing what he needs to do for his country economically. I'm going to do what I need to do for mine. I want to remind our viewers what Prime Minister Carney had to say when talking about the fact that he has not discussed or had a conversation with Trump just yet.
I look forward to, at the appropriate time, having a discussion as two sovereign nations that is comprehensive, not targeted at one issue.
How pressured should he be in terms of breaking the ice to have the conversation with our closest neighbor, country we viewed as our closest ally?
Well, I mean, there's always the sense that when there's a new Canadian Prime Minister, the first conversation has historically been, you know, in terms of world leaders, that first conversation has been with the American president. Now we know that it's not in this case, and the circumstances around this, of course, are very, very unique and strange. Carney has done, I think, you know, in the first few days of becoming Prime Minister, he made this trip to Europe. He is connecting with world leaders in that part of the world. I think to show Canadians that his plan is to strengthen the economy and diversify our trade partnerships so that we're not so reliant on the U.S. That said, there will be no replacement for the kind of relationship that we have had with the U.S. and the integrated supply chains that are still there. So that conversation is going to happen at some point. But I think for Carney, it's a high-risk thing, right? Like, what happens if Trump comes out of it and starts going on about how he doesn't want to do business with Carney either? And what if you get these really difficult to manage implications coming out of it? So I think at this point, Carney probably wants to be pretty careful that the circumstances around that conversation will be right, so that things don't get worse.
Fair enough, Professor. Thank you so much for being with us. We always appreciate your time.
Thank you too. Take care.
You too.